Now, this was a lot about forms in this module, and there are always more configuration options and so on, but we learned the most important aspects in the last couple of minutes and hours. Now, I want to have another look at our view function here instead, at this review view function. Up to this point in the course, we always defined views as functions, and that is the most straightforward and simplest way of defining views. It is, however, not the only way of defining views. Instead of defining them as a function, we can also define them as a class, and that can have certain advantages. You can also mix and match it. You don't have to transform all your view functions to classes. You can instead transform the most important ones. And I want to show how we could transform this review view function to a class and why we might want to do that. For that, in the views.py file, you simply add a new class, and you can generally give it any name you want. I'll name it review view. Again, this is just some kind of convention to pick any name you want and then append it with view to make it clear that this class is there to represent the view. Then we want to extend something. And again, we want to extend something coming from Django. For that, I'll import from Django.views. I'll import, and now there's a long list of view presets we could extend. And I'll start with the most straightforward basic view. So I'll import view from Django views, and then here extend view with this review view class. Now, how does this work? It made sense that a view is a function because we want to execute code in it. How do we make this work with a class? With a class, you simply add methods to the class in which your code will execute. And when extending the built-in view class, like we're doing it here, you add methods that carry the name of HTTP methods you want to support. And that's also why we might want to switch to a class-based view. In our review view function, we had to check the request method with an if statement to compare this to post and find out if we have a post request or a get request. When building a class-based view, we can instead define methods in there which are called get and post, so which carry these HTTP method names as names, all lowercase. And Django will then automatically call the appropriate method on our behalf based on the kind of request that reaches that view. Now, in those view methods, we now should always get self, since these are methods in a class, and also accept the request, just as we do it in the view function here. And then we can execute the code we executed before. So in the case of get, I'll create my form and then return the rendered template. In the case of the post method, I now want to create my form populated with the entered data and possibly redirect if it's valid. Here, like this. Now, of course, here in post, I still also want to render my template with the pre-populated form with the potential error messages if we don't make it into this is valid if block. So I'll still render this, I'll still render my template and duplicate that logic from get. And in post, I still should accept self and the request which we get here. And with that, we have a valid view class with our HTTP method names, where we still always need to return a response. That's the same as in the function-based view, but now we don't have the if check for the request method. And that allows us to get rid of that review function we had before. I'll still keep the thank you function, though we could also convert that to a class-based view if we wanted to. But with that, we now have this class here. Now we just need to update our code in urls.py, and instead of pointing at views.review, we now want to point at views review view, so this view class we just added, and call as view there. That's a built-in method which is available because we're extending the built-in view class, and that is required here in your URL patterns to make sure that Django is able to find those get and post view methods in the end. And with that, if we save everything, if I go to localhost 8000, this is still rendered. And if I enter some data here, I can also still submit it, and everything worked as before. If I enter something invalid here, and I trick myself to being able to do that by removing the required attribute, I also still get the form with the errors. So it works as before, but now with the class-based view. And it is, of course, up to you what you prefer. I personally think that this approach, this class-based approach, is a bit cleaner since you have those dedicated methods for the different kinds of HTTP requests, which can make it a bit easier to find the code for your different request types and to maintain that code. But ultimately, as always, it of course also comes down to your personal preference and what you personally find to be the most helpful. Now, if you Google for Django class-based views, you'll find the official docs. And there, if you click on built-in class-based views, you will see that there actually are a lot of different views you can extend from. We used just the view like this, which allows us to add get and post methods. Now, there are a lot of pre-built views you can inherit from instead for specific use cases. For example, if you have a view that should be focused on rendering a list of data fetched from a database, you could inherit from the list view. Then you would add a model property to your view class and link that to the model for which the list of data should be rendered. And that would then simply be the same as if you had this view, and in the get method, you would use your model to get all the data and return your own template with that data rendered in it. That would then be basically taken care of for you. And the list view is just one example. There are other views you can inherit from as well, like a detail view for a single piece of data which you want to present. Or there is a form view, for example, with the form handling there. You have a form view where handling forms is particularly convenient. And I definitely encourage you to also dive into those dedicated view classes you can inherit, because that can lead to even less code, because you can build a view that is really focused on one specific scenario. Now, in this course section, I used the generic view because I wanted to get started with those class-based view and show you the most versatile and flexible of all those class-based views you can inherit from. In the next course section, we are going to dive into some of the other important class-based views you can inherit from, like the list view and the forms view, and we're going to see when those views could come in handy, how you use them, and why that might be worth a thought and how that can save you some time.